Washington is in the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another live edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies to FanDuel Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our written work over there, si.com/college/Washington. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of a long night of celebrating, Husky fans, because Washington, they are the Pac-12 champions. They are 13-0 and are on their way to the college football playoff. Just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to get started. Lars, I just have one question for you. How about them dogs?
Man, I mean, that really, you can say what you will about certain plays, especially the 63-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter, right? But aside from that, that was a complete game of football. Like respectfully so. Like, yes, Oregon still got their touchdowns. They're going to get their touchdowns, right? Or you're never going to beat Oregon under Dan Lanning and with this talent level 41-10, right? This isn't going to be Colorado 2016, but it's certainly not going to be 2018 Utah, Washington, where it's like, oh, we need somebody to make a play a la Arizona State and Michelle Powell. We still had that right now. We still had that tonight. Mish still makes a fantastic read. And, you know, for all the, thankfully didn't see anybody clamoring for it, but, you know, the, love the comments. Just guys, keep
the comments. The comments are flowing. I am loving this. Yeah, no, keep coming. This is great.
But in keeping that two in the same way, Washington's defense, even with that touchdown, kept fighting every single play. Oregon ran the ball 35 yards in the first half. 124 yards total. Bo Nix led Oregon in rushing. Without Bo Nix, they, I believe, would have finished with 65 yards between Bucky Irving and Jordan James. That's just
absolutely unbelievable.
That is unheard of. Do you know what Oregon's lowest rushing total is this season?
I actually have no idea.
So it was twice the exact same amount. It was 113.
Wow.
So Washington held them to 124. And that includes, again, that still includes Bo Nix and running in all those games. But to hold those two backs to 65 yards, tip of the cap to Chuck Moreau. Now, again, that speaks to Tuli Tuligasnoa getting healthy against Washington State, not having to do a ton, and then answering the bell when he was called upon. Cameron Fabiculon, who I wrote a piece. I'm writing a piece on Inside the Huskies about this, just with the stellar defensive performance. Cam Fab set the tone early. Jabbar Muhammad helped on that fourth down play, the third down play that was repeated because of Trice's offsides. Just even at times when Washington, again, offsides. Okay, maybe now the defense kind of gets Oregon catches a break, things like that. No, they answered the bell every single time. We haven't seen that type of, even against Oregon in the first matchup, where you could arguably say Oregon lost the game instead of Washington won the game. This one, you could say Washington won the game. They made it close at the end with that 63-yarder, but Washington actually won this game as 9.5-point/10-point dogs.
Lars, so I have two things to say. First, this comment from Eric Miller that Dillon Johnson outrushed Oregon by 28 yards by himself. That's just absolutely unbelievable. Dillon Johnson had a fantastic day. I'm never going to say that Michael Penix doesn't deserve anything. I thought that Dillon Johnson should have won game MVP, but no issue at all giving it to Michael Penix. But the second thing is this is just unbelievable to just see how far this team has come over the last 6 weeks, where you were on this show saying, when was the last time Washington played a complete game? Would you, even though the final score was 34-31, would you say that Washington played a complete game tonight? Because I think so. And especially with the tackling that we saw from this team in the first half. With Oregon, I remember seeing at one point, they were 3 of 9 on third down, and Washington's defense, they showed up to play in the biggest moments. And there have been a lot of questions about the defense. And I don't know if they necessarily answered every single question tonight, but we saw what this defense can do when it's clicking on all cylinders today.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a complete game. Grady Gross kicked both of his Yeah, both of his field goal attempts.
Yep.
Right down the middle. Jack McAllister had that booming punt. I mean, I don't think Jack McAllister had a bad punt tonight when he was called upon, but you don't want to have your specialist called upon because that kind of means, well, you're either settling for points or you're getting nothing. So I think from that aspect, though, I mean, again, you're playing inside Allegiant Stadium, so the kick returns that weren't really there because you can boom those balls out of the end zone. But again, that still speaks to, at times last season and in seasons past, Washington hasn't been able to consistently take away the kick return game. They did. They kicked. Right. Grady Gross, scholarship or not, still ice cold in his veins, like nothing. And so I thought that 3-point when Washington decided to go for it on fourth down was going to come back to haunt him potentially, and it didn't, right? Because they built up enough of a buffer in that first half by setting the tone defensively and letting the offense, do its thing. And that's really what makes this team go is offense got the first touchdown on that long drive, or the first points on that long drive, but you're still getting points on the first drive, eating up a lot of clock, and then letting the defense go to work. And without question, Cam Fab and Asa Turner returning. Tuli, as I mentioned, was healthy against Washington State, but I think significantly more healthy tonight against Oregon. I don't think we've seen that defense all season.
No, not since that, some of the earlier games.
And I would say Michigan State probably, and that would probably be the last time Washington played closest to a complete game because again, Arizona they won, but it wasn't pretty. Reserves in the second half. The Cal one is, yeah. I mean, that's really the only other one that you can point to.
I think the one thing that we really need to talk about, though, because when you talk about a complete game, you talk about Michael Penix and Washington's passing offense. Michael Penix threw for 319 yards and only one touchdown today. Shout out to Dillon Johnson, who also threw a touchdown pass. Even though it's a little pop pass, it is what it is. It's still a touchdown pass. But Michael Penix looked the best and healthiest that we've seen him in a long time today. Now this team has 3 weeks off before we won't know till Sunday officially, but let's be. Oh, see, I was just going to say the Rose Bowl, until the Rose Bowl, because that's where this team is going. Yeah. And that's why I was like, oh yeah. But let's be real here. Now Michael Penix has 3 weeks off for a Rose Bowl, and with Dillon Johnson running the ball the way he has, especially in these big time games against big time opponents, if Washington's passing offense is also clicking the way it has been, this offense is probably, in my opinion, going to be the best of the 4 teams that are in the playoff.
I mean, you can't disagree that, and I think it's even crazy to think that Michael Penix spotted them a turnover. No, again, Mish Powell makes the play right back and cancels that out basically. Right. And so I think that actually kind of highlights the complete game aspect of, hey, even when the defense or the offense makes a mistake, the defense doesn't then, get gashed for, right on the next play, because then that's a momentum builder. And at times, the momentum certainly teetered both ways in this game. Washington had it early. Oregon goes on a 21 run, makes it close, actually takes the lead. And then Washington,
by that worst penalty I've ever seen, by the way. I'm sorry, I just had to get that out there.
Yeah, that was I honestly I said holy wowzers because I almost said holy expletive like just how it's bad when both Kirk Herbstreit, Fowler, and the replay official that gets paid big bucks to say that was a good call, flat out said I don't see anything there. And here's the thing, and this is why the other one wasn't called on Washington, that on I believe Dom Hampton. Both him and Jabbar, I believe it was Jabbar, right? The flag was not Jabbar. They were looking at the ball the entire time. The reason that flag gets thrown, and at times has gotten thrown against Washington, is because you're facing away from the ball. The defensive backs, you're tied. Just turn your head around. Make a play on the ball. Even if you whiff, if you're pushing him or doing whatever, you are making a football play. You are making a play on the ball. And he did exactly that. There was, even because it was Troy Franklin that it was against, right?
Yes. So
even Troy, you could see he didn't call for it. He wasn't like, hey, where's the whatever? No, Troy knew that wasn't a call. And so I think somebody had Oregon money line and wanted to keep things interesting, but that's really here.
Speaking of the Oregon money line, and not just the money line, Oregon was 9.5 point favorites in this game. Let's remember that. Because we have to take a second here and talk about our good friends over at FanDuel, because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. I know that our same game parlays for anytime touchdown scores didn't hit, but my Jeremy Bernard one, if I just not parlayed that one would have hit, and I was proud of that one. So just want to throw that out there.
That's fair. I honestly don't remember what mine were. So
the only thing I remember was that I talked about Jeremy Bernard. I think it was Jeremy Rome and Bucky Irving, and oh yeah, that's exactly what it was. Lars, I put a tweet out there, and I remember telling you this after we recorded our Friday show, saying I already know what the first thing that I want to put out into the Twitterverse is after a Washington win, if they're able to win this game. And that was Washington has now beaten Oregon at home. Washington has beaten Oregon on the road. Washington has beaten Oregon on a neutral field. Oregon had all the momentum coming into this game. Oregon had all the national attention coming into this game. Everything that we've seen about this game from the Husky perspective was, we don't know if they can do it. And to be fair, you and I were also somewhat skeptical because there were still questions about this team. We didn't not believe in this team, but there were a lot of questions that we wanted to see answered. Do you have any questions at this point about anything it is that Kalen DeBoer does? Because I don't have any. I don't.
No. I mean, my questions for him are future, but some of those questions, actually, to your point, have somewhat been alleviated, right? I mean, I still think there's kind of bigger picture issues to address from a consistent perspective, right? The point is there's two kind of levels to that, because you always want to have questions for coaches moving forward. I guarantee you, Kalen will still have questions and say, hey, why do we do this? Why do we take the points? Why do we go for it or not? So there's always going to be those questions. But in terms of a grand picture, I mean, Ryan Grubb I had been questioning him the last half of the season. And if anybody answered the bell aside from Chuck Morrell, it was Ryan Grubb. So, I mean, I think it's not a matter of questioning Kalen DeBoer. It's almost like, I mean, it's never been about Kalen, right? The questions have never been about Kalen. It's about who's around it. It's about who's around it. That's actually really been the question. And now it's a matter of, okay, well, clearly they made it when it counts. And again, you have to keep it in also perspective that Oregon's going to get their points, right? So you can look at that and say, hey, Bo still threw for 3 touchdowns and whatever. It's like, well, yeah, somebody's got to, right? I mean, I think if your takeaways from the game are, to our earlier point, Oregon or Dillon Johnson ran for more than Oregon did combined. Right. And coming into the game, I mean, Dillon had been good, right? But, it had almost seemed like a labor of effort to get 4 yards. Tonight, it was like, they only got 4? Okay. They only got 4 again? Okay. They were never really behind the sticks. And then when they were, I mean, yeah, they kind of paid for it, but it certainly wasn't that consistent, when we're talking about, okay, well, half of your run plays were good, or a third of your run plays are good. Everything except it was the outliers that weren't good.
So, and just to kind of take that a step further, one other thing that we also didn't see, because not only was Dillon Johnson cooking just all night long, another thing that we didn't see was the 1st and 10 incompletion, 2nd and 10 incompletion. All right, now you're kind of backed against a wall on 3rd and 10. It was exactly what you were saying, where it's staying ahead of the sticks, and it wasn't just in the running game. It was the passing game too. And like the biggest one you could talk about is that Jalen McMillan first down, right? Or on that little out route that kept the drive alive and everything there. But it wasn't just that. We saw it all night long. The one that really stood out to me, I'm totally blanking on when it was. I think it was that the drive before where they scored the go-ahead touchdown. Or no, excuse me, the touchdown to put them up by 10, where Michael Penix rolled out to his left and found Devin Culp just kind of sitting there underneath, where you're kind of like, oh, is he going to throw it away? And then Devin Culp's just sitting right there as a security blanket, picks up 10, 11 yards.
That's the one play Penix hasn't made consistently this year, is going through his progressions all the way. And why hasn't he been able to do that? Because the offensive line has been below what their standards are, right? Tonight,
right.
Washington.
I had to put this one up from Kraken Hawk. Shout out to you. I see them all. Don't worry.
But that's where this all started, right? Where Penix had so much time to find those guys. Now, yes, Oregon still did get home, but even when they brought pressure, they still picked it up. I mean, Dillon Johnson, his pass blocking was probably the best all season, and that's saying something from a guy who's been one of the more consistent guys in that department. So I think it really was the quintessential complete performance, right? The passing blocking, the run blocking, the run game is there, the pass game was there. Defense makes a couple of turnovers. It's wasn't great, right? You would still, and I mean, and here's the thing about that touchdown, because I do want to harp on this. I believe it was Tupatala that came within about 6 inches of batting that ball down.
Yep.
Because it looked like he was coming, and he had just missed it. It was just out of his reach. If he makes that, we're not even talking about, oh, this was a close game. This was Washington dominated Oregon. Now they did dominate him. The score doesn't necessarily reflect that. So, but if you're Washington and everybody watching this game, this is the number 2 team in the country.
I agree. And just because that's another thing that I want to just kind of take a step further. Because we saw really good play from the secondary tonight. They were batting down balls left and right, which was something we haven't really seen through the majority of the season. And then the pass rush didn't necessarily hit home against this offensive line, but it felt like there was a good amount of pressure on Bo Nix throughout the throughout the night. And there were times where it just felt like he didn't necessarily know what read to make. And like on the interception, where he was just kind of forced out of the pocket and then just a shout out to my friend Nick, who texted me that he Zach Wilsoned it. I thought that was just a beautiful analogy there, because he really just kind of threw it up and, Mish Powell's standing right there.
Well, I mean, I think the thing about that play was, I think to your point, Bo was still confused because in his defense, and this is what people need to understand about the game of football, an offensive player can't do what Mish Powell did.
Yeah.
Defense, ain't nothing against that. There ain't no rule in the book that says you can't go out and come back in. So it almost looked like, in Bo's opinion, he's coming off the bench to make this play. It's like a rogue player. It's like, no, he's eligible. And Mish established himself, got both feet down. That's an interception on Sundays too. So that's something to where when Washington needed to make a play, they did. And again, you can count to, was it the greatest defensive performance? No. But I mean, I think it's still up there, right? Because, again, you look at the final score, this final score is truly not indicative of the game, but you do have to give flowers to Oregon for rattling off, 21 straight at one point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 21 straight between the end of the second half, the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. And that was a chance where Washington goes down 24-20. They could have very much lost that game, right? In the sense of, if the defense doesn't step up and consistently, at least, I'm not, to your point about the pressure, it certainly didn't get home, right? But I think it was disruptive, almost like what Oregon does to Washington, or what opposing teams do to Washington, where you can get a couple of sacks or a sack on Penix, which is a major victory, but the point is to get him off his timing. And throughout the first half, certainly, but even into the second half, he had all day. He could have lit up a cigar back there. I mean, that was truly surprising. I think that was because that was the one area of this game where you felt Oregon might have had the advantage. Not necessarily against UW's offensive line, but their depth at edge is so good. UW is okay, right? They have Zion and Braylon and a few others, but it's not to the level of Oregon's. And tonight, that wasn't the case.
And I think one thing to highlight there is the Jordan Birch injury. Him getting hurt on that first possession definitely didn't do them any favors in that department. I was talking with our buddy Spencer McLaughlin, who was there covering the game in person, about that. And so that definitely didn't help them there. But again, like you just said, they have so much depth there that, that's still a big loss, but there was enough behind them where you don't know how much that would necessarily impact the game, where, a guy like Matayo Uyunglele can still step up and make some plays. They've relied on him all season long, former 5-star recruit from St. John Bosco, where it just felt like there wasn't that much pressure getting on Penix. There were so many times where, you and I, we sit up there in the box. It's, he's got to get rid of it. He's got to get rid of it. There's pressure coming. And tonight it was, look at all that time he's got back there. And while he didn't need to find his check down, that was a big part of it. But we saw him be so overly accurate. Like, that was something I don't want to say overly accurate, because that's just who he is, but we haven't seen that version of Michael Penix since, I think, the last time these two teams played.
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew Penix was completely healthy when he went right to Kyrie Jackson's face after he got taken down in the first half.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
kind of gave him that nod. I'm like, hey, look at the scoreboard, my friend. Look at the scoreboard. Good job, but look at the scoreboard, my friend. And I think it speaks to, again, when people say, oh, was it the ribs? Was it the flu? Was it, whatever you want to call it? When you're sick in any capacity, hurt, sick, what have you, your processing ability mentally isn't as sharp as it normally would be. And that's still a testament to Michael being able to play through all that. But you saw tonight where he seemed like he was in the oven cooking, he could do what he wanted. And even when he made a mistake, again, he made mistakes when Oregon pressured him, right? The Kyrie Jackson pick was off of pressure. The fourth down sack, those sort of things. I mean, he kind of got lucky where his hand was coming up just enough to where that was not ruled a fumble, I believe, in the second half, third quarter, right?
Yeah. That was not a fumble, by the way.
No, it wasn't, right?
No. So I'm putting that out there because Spencer and I had a conversation about it on the side where he was like, yeah, that's absolutely a fumble. And the thing with had his arm stayed back as he was getting ready to load up and lost it, then it's a fumble. By the time he brought it to the midway, I think Herbster mentioned on the cast, but it was at least 2 or 3 inches. It was enough to where it's breaking even with your shoulder and head to say, hey, the arm is not behind him, it's at him. And anything at or above, right? It's almost like in baseball, tie goes to the runner, even though I know that's not an actual thing. And I'm sure you'll have an opinion on that. But it's like, hey, if you're here or above, you're good. If you're like 45 degrees, okay, different story. But that was clearly an incomplete pass. And, I mean, again, there were a number of different calls that could have gone so many ways. But, that game lived up to everything I think that we thought it would be, right? We never bought into the 9-point spread, but for either team, right? Even though Washington had a 10-point lead in the first quarter, if not the first half, it really just seemed like, okay, Oregon's going to get back in the game. Again, as much as we would like to think that Washington would put a team away, Oregon's too good. Oregon's too good to get put away by anybody, even by the only team that's going to put Oregon away is Georgia. And that's 2022 Georgia, not 2023 Georgia. I'm not sure 23 Georgia puts Oregon away the way they did last year. So I think the fact that Washington put them away enough and are kind of always held that margin even after trailing speaks volumes to, getting back to full circle here, the type of person and team that Kalen DeBoer has built at Washington. I think there's one phrase that I want to use here to kind of describe that. And it's something you and I have talked about all season long. Something that Kalen harps on all season. They're built for this. Kalen DeBoer has gone to so many lengths with the people he's hired, the people he's brought in, to make sure that every aspect of his program is exactly what he wants it to be. Because we look at the on-field hires, but that's not the extent of the story. The strength and conditioning staff, the nutrition staff, everybody that he brings in to help off guys like Ben Creamer, who is his biggest job is helping the edge rushers with their hand fighting. There are so many people like that Kalen has brought in to make sure that every aspect of this program means something, that everybody has a job that means something and helps them achieve a goal. And I wanted to say that really quickly because I wanted to talk about the built for this thing because I wanted to take it back to Dillon Johnson for a second. Because for anybody who wasn't there and watching this game on TV, Dillon Johnson was exhausted during that final drive. You could see him limping a little bit. His foot's definitely still bothering him. I don't think that's a long-term thing. I think that's more of a pain management thing after getting stepped on because that hurts, man. Just anybody who's ever been stepped on in cleats playing any sport, yeah, you know how much that hurts. But you could see him just kind of waving off the. I thought it was really funny because somebody would come over and ask him if he wanted some water, and he would just kind of wave him off, and it was just kind of this message of, yeah, no, like I'm fine, I'm ready to go because I'm built for this. And then on 3rd and 9, you take that carry 18 yards to seal this ball game, and that's what this team has done all season long. They find ways to win in the biggest moments. And people have asked us, like, why aren't they winning convincingly? Doesn't matter at this point. Now they're in the playoff. Doesn't matter if you win convincingly or not. I want to get to this question here from Kraken Hawk because it's something you and I have talked about. Since honest question, are we at the point where we have to worry about a big time blue blood stealing DeBoer? Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, a few others. We're gonna say no. Lars, I'll let you expand on that a little bit.
Well, so first of all, a couple of those teams, I'm not sure if we're quantifying what we're quantifying Blue Bloods as, but if you're Kalen DeBoer, you said no to Texas A&M, whether officially or unofficially. They didn't chase after DeBoer, right? Despite what certain Oregon insiders want to say. But, there's a number of jobs that if Kalen wanted to wait, or if they wanted to wait for Kalen, let's say Kalen was truly contemplating the A&M job. And he said, hey, you know what? Let me get through the championship game. Don't make any other hires. I'm willing to do an interview and kind of give you guys the respect on that. He's not even doing that. So it's hard for me to think. And with the move to the Big Ten, I don't think Michigan's a big enough job. Respectfully, I don't think Michigan is a big enough job. Ohio State, maybe. Michigan, maybe, depending on what your views are and what Kalen's views are. But I think if you're moving to the Big Ten and you're Washington, what's the reason for Kalen DeBoer to leave? Now, yeah,
right.
Everybody's going to say money, right? Or Ohio State could offer him 10, 12 million a year. It's like, first of all, if you're Kalen DeBoer, you're getting paid by Troy Dannon no matter what. Troy's not going to say, hey, we're going to give you $5 million. We're going to give you $6 million. We're going to still lowball you. I have no problem believing that Troy Dannon is going to back the Brinks trucks up for Kalen DeBoer. I don't think that'll be an issue. He won't be the highest paid coach in the country, but I certainly think he'll be upper mid tier in the Big Ten.
I agree with you there, and I'm gonna go out on I don't know if I'm gonna call it a limb here, but I'm gonna go in the tradition of the show here and make a bold prediction. By the time the Rose Bowl is played, Kalen DeBoer will have a new contract, and that contract will be north of $9 million a year.
Okay, there's the bold take. There's the bold take. I'm not sure the first part of that take is bold, but the second part I'll give you.
Hey, man, let me build up to it. I enjoy drama at times. I want to build up to it here. No, I would say that. Yeah, no, that one is north of $9 million a year. We're gonna go there. Aaron Nance asks, did we survive this one? No, we talked about this a little bit earlier. No, the Washington won this game in every fashion. Every aspect of this game, Washington won by I would say a fair margin. And that's all props to Oregon, because that is a good team that Dan Lanning has put together. And Washington dominated them in every fashion tonight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about this. Just look at the quick stats here. Like, I'm trying to think of, we touched on it early. Wow. Who do you think had more yards tonight, Jalen Polk or Troy Franklin?
Jalen Polk.
Yeah. Troy Franklin had 34 yards and 4 catches on 9 targets. Tez Johnson was the leading receiver at 68 yards.
Wow.
Like, even for a secondary that gave up a 63-yard burger at the end of the game, like that.
Much love to Aaron.
Again, did Elijah have some plays he wants back? Sure. Did Thaddeus probably have a couple he wants back? Sure. Again, this is not
absolutely
the only thing that is perfect is their record, and that is all that matters. But the way they got there was certainly more convincing than the last 5 weeks combined.
Yes. But now, and this is the whole thing, right? Now, all of that, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was all about getting to this point. And that was the main point that we had on this show. Everything was survive in advance by any means necessary. Now they're in the playoffs, and it's survive in advance again, but now it's 2 wins away. You are 2 wins away from being national champions. And this is Lars. I want to just kind of make this personal for the viewers out there, all the listeners, all the everydayers who we truly do appreciate, just for a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. Because you and you've been covering this team a lot longer than I have, but the first season where we covered this team together, sitting next to each other in the press box, was 2021. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think that within 2 years that this team could be within 2 games of a national championship?
No. I mean, short answer is no, but I did always say, and I have maintained it in 21, the talent that was on that team for the most part is still on this 23 team.
100%.
And I've told you, I know I've told you this, and I don't know if I'm pretty sure I've said it on the show, but I made this point that these players have been I can say screwed, right? They've been screwed out, right? That's
Yeah,
a fair word.
you
Right? I
can
can
say
say
that.
they're screwed. Yeah, they were screwed out of 2 years for two different reasons. They were screwed out in 2020 because of the COVID year that they had no control over, and they went 3-1 under Jimmy Lake in his first season. There's nothing. Well, that's kind of a wash year, but nothing you can do about that. And then you come back in 21 and have the clunker of a season with the coaching staff that fell apart, and the players I told multiple people could have coached that team to more wins than the staff did. I'm almost positive of that. And that's with Dylan Morris at quarterback, which I think
I would have
Dylan
installed
Morris,
my Madden playbook and gone to work.
right. Like I don't think I don't think the 21 season was an indictment of the players. It was because of those players that they won 4 games. It was like that team with that coaching staff probably should have gone 1-11. Like, if we're being real, like, it was that bad from a coaching perspective, but it was a 1-11, 12-0, 13-0 now type of team when you add Michael Penix. And here's the thing about that. That's what I think is the cool story, because Dylan Morris was the incumbent guy, right? Started in 21, 2020, all that stuff. And the relationship that he built with Michael Penix, to where Michael Penix, you'd come in and think he had never played more than 6 games in his career and in 4 seasons in Indiana, never been able to stay healthy, showed flashes when he did play. But to have that relationship, and then Dylan realized, hey, instead of being threatened, like, oh, this guy's coming in, he's buddy with DeBoer, I'm going to leave and go wherever. Dylan said, no, I'm your bridge to the locker room, my man. Like, I want to be here just as much as you want to win this job. And that relationship, I think, kind of set the tone for what has become of Washington under DeBoer, where it's like, hey, these players are playing for each other. And Penix has shouted out Morris on a number of occasions post-game throughout the season, just thanking him and saying, hey, that guy pushed me. Like, if it wasn't for him, maybe I'm not as motivated. I mean, if I have to compete against a redshirt freshman or Sam Peoria, where I know I'm better than them and it's not even close, Penix has still got that killer instinct, I think, that we both agree on, that he would have been dominant regardless. But I think it's just a cool kind of moment to think back to all the pieces that came together. Dillon Johnson never ran for more than 1,000 yards at Mississippi State or even close to it, has 14, 15, 16 touchdowns now at Washington in 1 season, chasing a national championship. So this is massive for Kalen DeBoer. It's massive for the play. It's everything the players deserve, right? Rowan, when he came to Washington, said, I want to win a national championship. This team was built to win a national championship. They finally got the coaching to match, and that's what Kalen DeBoer's brought to Washington.
I'm glad, because that's kind of how I wanted to make sure that we finish this off, and that's why I brought this up, because the players deserve all the credit in the world for this, because they're the ones who are out there playing the game, but the coaches are the ones who put them in position to do this. And when you and I watched that 2021 team, we saw, oh wow, these receivers look like they're going to be really good. The offensive line was a mess, but that was its own story. Shout out to John Donovan for that. The defense, you saw so many good pieces on the defense. We saw Brilliant Trice break out. Obviously, there's no Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon on this team, or else this would be just far and away the number 1 team in the country, in my opinion, because those dudes would change everything. But we saw all the pieces. But it was something that there were even times, in my opinion, under Chris Peterson, where we saw the same thing, where it was, oh, these pieces are here, but there's something missing. There's always one thing that's missing. Now, under Kalen DeBoer, with everything that they have done this season, I don't feel that there's any room to say that at this point. And it's unbelievable, because we'll be coming back to all the everydayers on Sunday when it's officially announced that Washington is going to the Rose Bowl. We'll probably do like a quick live stream then. We'll figure out what our plans are but between now and Sunday. But Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers for taking some time to just come on here, blow up the comments. This has been an incredible live stream. This has been so awesome. Thank you so much for this. And if you're new, this is your first time here, thank you so much for joining us. We really hope you enjoy the content and you come back. And there's so many easy ways to stay involved with us. You can follow us on Twitter, or the easiest way is just hit subscribe wherever you get this podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. We update this show almost every single day. There's going to be transfer portal news. There's going to be recruiting news. We're going to get a bunch of NFL draft stuff come that time of the year. Just stay tuned for all that. Make sure you like the video. Leave us a 5-star review for audio only. Leave us a comment, however you're feeling, down in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Sunday.